Again, I am Chris Lee of Southeastern 16, joined by Chase Robinson, also of Southeastern 16. Today's show, we're going to power rank the SEC's 16 head coaches heading into spring practice. I'm sure nobody will be upset. Nobody will have issue with our rankings. They will be perfect. That's how this is going to go down, right, Chase?
Absolutely. I expect no pushback. Yeah, everybody's going to love it. That's what you get with rankings, right, Chris?
That's what you get with rank. Let's start the love right away. Let's jump into it.
Yeah, so number 16, I don't think this one will come as a surprise to anybody. I went Jeff Lebby at number 16. Obviously, not winning an SEC game sets you behind in your first year. First head coaching job. Look, I think he has, I think he can be a good head coach. Whether Mississippi State's the place, I mean, he was set behind so far, Chris. We've talked about it. Mississippi State was in an unfortunate position with losing Mike Leach. You then turn to Zach Arnett. He wasn't the guy. Then you go to Jeff Lebby. So it's just been constant turnover there at Mississippi State. And I just feel like Lebby was in such a poor position stepping into it. The roster was in shambles. And so it's not on him. I feel like that he is at the bottom of the SEC. I think it's going to take extra work to build this Mississippi State program back up. And I don't know if that's a job that it's going to, I just think it's going to take a few years to get this thing back rolling.
Yeah, look, no shot at Mississippi State's program. None of this is right. It was just this would have been a tough situation for Alabama, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, it starts with the passing of Mike Leach, the premature hiring of probably another guy in Zach Arnett who just wasn't cut out for it. So you're switching systems in, you're switching them again when you hire Lebby. It's at a time where Ole Miss is having the best run of Ole Miss football probably since the 60s or close to it. That always affects things in your backyard with recruiting and perception and all sorts of stuff. And then on top of that, the NIL situation hasn't been great. I think they've maybe been in the process of addressing it, but that's a lot of stuff working against you. So I almost think instead of 16, Jeff Lebby almost needs to be an asterisk with the not rated. Just because of the situation.
No, yeah, I completely agree with you. And so, yeah, I guess, yeah, you kind of put an asterisk there. But, yeah, it was a bad situation there at Mississippi State.
Let's say something about them, too, though. It's not been that long since they were in that string of bowl games. So it's not hopeless. It's just difficult right now.
Yeah.
Because when you miss a little bit, when something goes wrong by a little bit, it can go wrong quickly in this league. So
yeah,
there's
you're in the toughest league in college football.
Yeah, exactly.
That you're having to play catch up with. So, yeah, Lebby 16. So I want to, before I get into the next ones, I want to say these next few coaches I feel like could be in a number of order, but these are just the coaches to me that just haven't proved much as of late. Like, I feel like they're good coaches, but like something's going on. And so moving to number 15, this is where I may get some pushback here. I've got Hugh Freeze at Auburn. His time at Auburn so far has been underwhelming, to say the least. And it's got to change. He had some talent this year. The play calling sketchy at times. We've just seen a lot where you're like, Auburn should be better under Hugh Freeze. And it hasn't. Like, again, the roster looks good for this year. We'll see what he can do. I thought the roster wasn't bad last year and underperformed. I just think that's kind of a theme right now for Auburn, is underperforming, and Hugh Freeze has got to change that. And so, I've got him at 15. I just, again, I can't quite put my finger on what it is, but there's something there where they're underperforming.
Well, by the way, welcome, Shane, new member. We appreciate you being here and supporting our work. You do morning radio in the state of Alabama, which is a little crazy about football. I mean, would Auburn fans give you a lot of pushback on this? Because I think it'd be mixed. I think there are some that absolutely would not. Maybe some that would. There's still a lot of believers there, and I'm not even picking a side here. I'm just talking through it.
No, I definitely think it would be a mixed bag. I would say 50-50. I would probably say 60 don't like him, 40 do like him. And so, it'd be a mixed bag. Not quite 50-50, but there's definitely some believers, but definitely some that are not.
Well, a lot of his troubles relate to the quarterback position. And again, you could get Nick Saban a below average quarterback. Right now, I'm not sure he could win big if Nick Saban were to come back. So there's that. But on the other hand, Hugh Freeze was supposed to be kind of a finder and developer of quarterbacks if you go back to what he did at Ole Miss. And I think one of the biggest, I don't know that we've ever talked about this on this show either, Chase. I think one of the biggest indictments of Hugh Freeze is what Bo Nix went and did at Oregon and now becoming an NFL quarterback. Now, look, maybe that's hard because there's a longer timeline with age, with COVID, and you see guys get a shot to develop as quarterbacks that maybe weren't before with the portal and all kinds of things, and maybe that's hard. We've all seen quarterbacks that we never thought would be big-time players that became that it was a little underwhelming at first. And so I don't know if that's fair or if it's not fair, but it's an observation. And to me, when Bo Nix went to Oregon, lit it up, and now is an NFL starter, that to me was, okay, that's another little bit of a piece of evidence that doesn't necessarily go in his favor.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And again, Hugh Freeze took over a situation that was Auburn was steps behind, miles behind where they should have been after Brian Harson's era there. So again, he stepped in, wasn't a great situation, but we know Hugh Freeze has won games in the past, but it hasn't translated to Auburn. We'll see again what he does this year. I think he's recruited well and has a good roster. But we'll see what he does there, and brought some pieces out of the portal. We'll see if Jackson Arnold can be the guy there for Auburn. Who knows? All right, number 14, I've got Mark Stoops of Kentucky. And this is a guy, he's been there a while. This year, they started the season, we thought, okay, Kentucky, you play good with Georgia, you beat Ole Miss, and then the wheels just came off of Kentucky, and they really weren't playing well on either side of the ball. Just putting quarterbacks in and out. Like, I don't know. It was not his finest year, Mark Stoops at Kentucky, I feel like. And, I think some people were probably pushing him to move on, for Kentucky to move on, but they didn't. And again, I feel like he could get back to the Kentucky of, several years ago. That wasn't it this year. And I feel like there's a lot of, not saying Mark Stoops is a bad coach, I just think there's a lot of better coaches ahead of him. That's why I have him at 15 or 14 rather.
I'm not ignoring you. We're just having a vehement disagreement in the background here, which I actually agree with. Look, I get all the stuff. I am worried about their ability to develop quarterbacks. And I'm going to let you talk till he gets this out of his system.
And so I'm interested to hear what you have to say, Chris, because I think Kentucky is an interesting conversation based on what they have been to what they're trending toward, because I feel like what they're trending toward right now is in the wrong direction. And I think they were going in the right direction. And so I think, and again, it's probably not all coaching, but I feel like, and we go back to Auburn, like we said, Auburn, the quarterback position, I feel like their quarterback position is not a good position at Kentucky. And it's not been good. It's not been consistent, and that's a problem.
Yeah, my apologies. These are the joys of broadcasting from your home office. You just heard all of them, and I'm sorry for that. Anyway, welcome, human. Um, yeah, I'm a little bit more of a history carries weight with me. And on
Yeah.
one hand, I get it. I have a lot of concerns about their ability to identify and develop quarterbacks. And boy, when you get that wrong in this league, it can go wrong quickly. I still look back to what he did under Joker Phillips and getting this program consistently to bowl games. And yes, I get that that was built on the backs of playing Eastern Kentucky and Kent State and four winnable games every year, but you still had to win two or three in the SEC. And them had some really nice wins. Look, this team was still good enough to beat Ole Miss last year and basically keep Ole Miss out of the playoff. I have concerns about them too. And I don't know that I'm going to be really high on Kentucky coming into this year after really getting burned by Kentucky a year ago. But I don't know that I'm willing to throw away a decade of good work too. And frankly, Hugh Freeze, I think for all the dysfunction with Hugh Freeze recently, I don't know. There's some coaches in front here that have really not done a whole lot yet. And Hugh Freeze, for all his faults, has accomplished some stuff in his career. Now maybe that's all in the past. Coaches have expiration dates. And maybe that's a case with both Hugh Freeze and Mark Stoops. But I feel like a couple guys you're going to have on this list, I would slot behind these two. But that's what this is about. The opinions are for. And if your stance is where's the program right now, I do think it's defensible. It's just how much do you want to put faith in the past that's getting a little bit further in the rearview mirror, particularly with Hugh Freeze.
Right. Yeah. And that's valid to think through that as well. We welcome your comments, your super chats in the comments as well. If you want us to get to what you have to say, give us a super chat there. Would love to get to some of those today. All right, moving on. Number 13, I've got Sam Pittman of Arkansas. I feel like it's just it's a roller coaster with Arkansas. Like some good things, and then I feel like they take a step forward, then two back, and then a couple steps forward, and then one back. I feel like it's just never been super consistent under Sam Pittman. I think he's good for college football. Like I think he's good for the SEC to have Sam Pittman as head coach. It's just the consistency to me has not been there in his time at Arkansas.
Yeah, I'm rooting for you to be wrong here because I think he's one of my favorite people in SEC football. Again, has done some things here. Although, look, the record at Arkansas is 30-31, and that's kind of illustrative of what they are. I was just saying they feel like they're a perennial Birmingham Bowl type team. If you smooth out the ups and the downs, which again in this league is not awful, but it just kind of is what it is. I don't know that you can really argue to move Sam Pittman very far from this spot one way or the other.
Yeah. Number 12, I went with Brent Venables of Oklahoma. I feel like this is one that he's got to have a good year this year. I think we've seen him. He's a great coordinator. I think we've seen kind of the upside of his head coaching abilities. And I know this year was just a weird year in Norman, injury after injury. Just you never had your full team out there. You had to fire your offensive coordinator mid-year. Defense coordinator leaves after this year. It's just there's been I feel like thing after thing for Brent Venables there. But I just feel like again there was some inconsistency. You get a huge win over Alabama. That definitely helped this past year. But then again, like, can his success as being a great defensive coordinator translate to being a head coach, to leading a program, to making sure, every cylinder's working on your team? I feel like we just haven't seen that yet from Brent Venables in Oklahoma.
I could argue him almost in the Jeff Lebby category. that's probably a little much of like might put him a couple of spots lower and kind of give him an incomplete, because let's unpack the what he's done. Okay, he's a defensive guy going to a school that had been pretty offensive minded. First year, I think just from memory, they lost every close game imaginable in a high powered offensive league. Last year they go 10-3, which you almost forget. Frankly, I'd kind of forgotten it. Okay. They come to the SEC, they're ready. We had circled them as a sleeper team based on the talent. That talent basically all gets hurt, except for their two studs on defense, Stutzman and Bowman. And so where are we with Oklahoma? You know, they did beat Alabama at year's end, but okay, in the midst of the bad breaks, you know, the close losses, the injuries last year, his wife's also got cancer. And that's a thing that I just don't know how you just deal with that and move on with your life every day. And so that's probably why I'm a little bit more generous with Brent Venables than maybe you were too in the ranking. I just think it's been a really weird situation where it's always something, and frankly, a lot of that just beyond his control. Like it feels like it's hard to rank him at 12 because you're sitting there with Mark Stoops and Hugh Freeze, who've done some things in this league, right? And Venables hasn't, but it's that, and then the kind of the recency with those two. So I think this group of coaches, other than maybe Pittman and Lebby, has been really tough to rank.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt about it. And you should see my my notebook that I write all this stuff in, and all the markouts and arrows and X's I have on this thing, trying to get this list like I like it, and very difficult task.
Yeah.
This was. Moving to number 11, I went Billy Napier of Florida. I feel like we're seeing now an upside in Billy Napier. Recruiting still good, but I feel like this year kind of showed us, okay, this guy has instilled belief in his team. They didn't give up. They're buying into whatever he was preaching to them this year, that they were buying in. Like, we saw this team could have given up on him very easily at the beginning of the year. They didn't. They stayed the course. They balled in. They won some games down the stretch and finished a good season in a very challenging schedule. So I feel like we're seeing an upside of Billy Napier. He's been in the job now a couple of years. He's getting in a rhythm of being a head coach. He's learning things of being a head coach at a high level. I know he's a head coach at Louisiana and did big things there. The SEC is much different, though. Like, I feel like we're starting to see the kind of coach Billy Napier is, and to me, he's going to be a coach that just keeps moving up this list. I really do think so.
Yeah, I think he's a hard one to rank, because, like, if we'd ranked him anywhere other than 15 or 16 3 months ago, people would have laughed us out of the room. And so to me, you know, a month and a half's worth of work feels like a lot to elevate a guy's resume. On the other hand, if you've been with this channel from the beginning, you know, people I talked to around the league, when he got the job, everybody was really afraid of Billy Napier in Florida because of what they thought he could build. They needed to bring some discipline back to a program that hadn't had much. And sometimes it takes a while to change the culture. And I thought the culture, to me, from the outside, spoke for itself at the season's end, when they went through the injuries at quarterback, and when they just played some of their best ball at the end of the season while the vultures were circling around Billy Napier for months. I will be very interesting to see where we rank him in a year.
Yeah, and again, I think he's going to be a coach that climbs up this list, because I think Florida can have a good year again this year. And I think Billy Napier is a great recruiter as well. We don't talk a ton of recruiting here on the channel, but his recruiting efforts this year were really good. Landed a top 10 class in most of the organizations that rank him. So, yeah, I think Billy Napier, we're seeing a big upside here for Florida coach Billy Napier. All right, moving into our top 10. At number 10, I went with Clark Lee of Vanderbilt. Again, if he is able to continue to bring guys in out of the portal, get folks behind Vanderbilt football, like, I think he could be a coach climbing the list, because I feel like not often do you see a coach that says, all right, look, defense is my side of the ball. I'm going to take care of that. I'm going to bring in guys who know offense really well, and I'm going to let them have it. I think that to see Clark Lee do that and to be successful while doing that, I think says a lot about him as a coach. He just wants what's best for Vanderbilt football. And I think that being the case, he's going to have success there. If he's able to say, we're going to put it's not about me, it's about Vanderbilt, it's about these players, and we're going to put people in positions where they can lead the side of the ball where they're best at. And I think that's what made them good this year, is because they had leaders who, one, weren't afraid to move to what they could do best, but two, just do what's best for the team. I really liked that about Clark Lee this year.
Yeah, this is a complicated one, because again, I'm a little bigger on history, and year 1 and year 3 were awful. And year 1 was beyond his control in a lot of ways. I mean, you look at Vanderbilt's not had a player drafted in the NFL draft, I think, since Clark Lee's been there. Which, those were mostly all of Derek Mason's guys. Now, look, they're getting to the point where they don't have more guys drafted. That's an indictment on their recruiting.
Yeah.
On the other hand, the resources there are scarcer than any other program in the conference. They started drawing up plans for their stadium in 2019. Still won't be finished till he plays. He still won't play a game in it till next year, which is his first year. They were late to the portal. They figured some of that stuff out. They got something now with Diego Pavi that's working. Can they replicate that? I don't know. If they do again, I think 10 is fair. But it feels to me like you just need to see a little bit more proof of concept, to me, if you're going to put them ahead of maybe some of these guys that have a long history of going to bowls and doing some other things. But then again, it's also Vanderbilt, so it's you almost can't handicap that edge of it enough.
Yeah, no, that's valid, and yeah, that's a good point. Number 9, I feel like I'll get some pushback on this one. Brian Kelly.
Ooh.
LSU. I feel like just he's had chances to do really big things, and he just can't. Like, I feel like he can't win openers. So therefore, you kind of start the season behind if you're under Brian Kelly. I feel like, again, you host Alabama and Baton Rouge this year, and you get blown out. Now, they did have some good wins this year, but I just feel like there's inconsistency there. And this is a big year for him. I feel like he's got to win this year. He's produced great talent. There's no way around that. Great players come play for him. But still, the consistency of winning games and winning big moments, I just haven't seen from Brian Kelly.
Okay, you can hear my surprise. I do not know what these rankings are going in, which makes it, to me, more interesting. And again, is Mr. History, and let's look at the downside. I have a hard time with this one at 9, and I'm going to tell you why. Per Wikipedia, I'm going back and looking at Brian Kelly's head coaching record all the way back to 1991 when he started at Grand Valley State. Here are Brian Kelly's 500 or worse seasons. Central Michigan, 2004, 4-7. 12 and 13 Notre Dame are vacated because of probation, so throw that out. 4-8 at Notre Dame in 2016, which he turned into 10-3, 12-1, 11-2. And there was one more in the middle out at Grand Valley State in 1999. He went 5-5. To me, that's, I mean, you can have a horrible season more often than that just by stupid, dumb luck. And to me, Brian Kelly, like, they're never bad. And I know that's not a great selling point for an SEC coach, but they've underachieved at LSU. Okay, fine. They've still gone 6-2, 6-2, and 5-3 in the conference. The situation he took up from Ed Orgeron Was it complete disarray, complete lack of discipline? No, look, they got talent coming out their ears down there. I get it. They do. And I'm a little disappointed that they've not been able to do more on the defensive side of the ball. I just don't think I could put 8 coaches ahead of Brian Kelly.
And that's fair. Yeah,
But I get it. They have championship level expectations, and they did not really come close. Also,
yeah. Again, I think he's been in the position where he could have been. Like, they could have been in the playoff conversation this year, but they weren't. They couldn't win the games they needed to get there, and so that's what led me to put him at 9.
Also, had their best player hurt. To be fair.
Yeah. Number 8. I went with Eli Drinkwitz, a guy I feel like, again, like great moments, just hasn't been able to, especially this year, like, again, playoff conversation, wasn't able to get him there. And again, I think like he's done a good job of turning the thing around, but can they consistently stay up there? Like, or are we going to see a drop off in Missouri, go back to the Missouri of old? Like, I want to see. I like where Missouri's at. I just want to see him stay there, and that's the thing to me. Can they stay there? Can he keep Missouri at this level?
It kind of felt a little bit like Mark Stoops light until 2 years ago. They were perennially 6-6. Last year they won 10, 11 games, but the schedule was weaker than anybody else's in the league. I feel like, to me, it's hard to justify moving Eli Drinkwitz more than a spot or two from this, because the record's been good, but it's not great in a lot of ways. And there's some great coaches on this list. And in my opinion, it's starting with the guy that we just ranked behind him.
Yeah. So I think there's upside. I think there's potential in Missouri. It's just, to me, can they stay there? Is kind of what I was thinking. All right, number 7, I rode with Mike Elko. Texas A&M. Again, year 1, thought there were some good things. Really did. And so just, again, getting to big moments, I think about, and we spent a lot of time on Thursday talking A&M. If you missed that, you can go back and watch it. With Olin Buchanan. So we had a great Texas A&M conversation. But, I just think back to, again, they were in a position they could have played for SEC championship. And they couldn't. They lost to Auburn. They lost to Texas down the stretch. I just feel like, again, I think there's a lot of potential at A&M. He's having to rebuild this thing. It was not good under Jimbo Fisher in his later years. Mike Elko comes in. I think he's doing some good things. I really do. Let's see what he can do in year 2, year 3. So I am curious to see moving forward what Elko can do, if he can keep being in the conversation for an SEC title.
Yeah, hard to rank, because I think the body of his work was going 16-9 at Duke, which is hard to do, as everybody knows. To me, I would go lower here. I just thought that with the defensive guys they had in the schedule, 8-5 was light. They came in talking about being this monster defense with sacking anybody and everybody. Never really panned out. I think it's defensible if you look at Duke, but I like to see a little bit more track record in the SEC, and to me that's higher than I would have put him. But look, we could look up a couple of years from now, he could be top 5 easily. So
yeah.
It's not like they were bad.
Right, yeah. And, again, I just want to see kind of what he can do year 2. And sometimes, again, it's hard to always judge a coach year 1 in the SEC, but I do think there's upside to A&M. Number 6, Kalen DeBoer, Alabama. I think, and again, year 1 in the SEC, good things. Some really head-scratching moments as well for the Crimson Tide. Is he a good coach? I definitely think so. I 100% think Kalen DeBoer's a good coach. He's a winner. He's won everywhere he's been. I think he needs his guys. He needs times. I've said it over and over on our content. Alabama is going to be much better this year than they were last. But again, there's the front half of the coaches in the SEC are very good, and I think in years to come, Kalen DeBoer will be, at the top or towards the top of this list. But right now, I've got him at 6 just because of the ones ahead of him, the success that the ones ahead of him have had. But I think year 2 is big, and I think it will be big for Kalen DeBoer at Alabama.
Chase, was this year a disappointment for Alabama? Yes, it was. I still think I would have given them maybe that last at-large playoff berth. I know that's not a popular opinion, but I think that some of the data supported it. But the bigger thing is he's won everywhere he has been. You look at what they did at Washington when, that's not a program that won a lot in recent years, to my memory. I still think he was a good hire. And I'll tell you this, there's only one guy I would consider putting in front of him that you got behind him. That's Brian Kelly.
Yeah, that's fair.
And I'm not even sure that I would. It would just be a consideration. Everybody else below him, to me, it's not an argument.
Yeah. And look, I went back and forth on DeBoer and where to put him. I landed on 6, and I put Lane Kiffin at 5. And I could have easily swapped those. But this is just where I landed. Lane Kiffin, and the argument is, and I can hear it now, like he hasn't won the big games. They could have been a playoff team, and if they would have been, he would have been higher on this list. But I feel like he puts out good product at Ole Miss, which Hugh Freeze had a couple of good years there, but he has consistently had good years. Have they played for the national championship? No. Have they competed for an SEC championship? No. But I think he's got Ole Miss in a good place.
Yeah, I'm a late comer to the Lane Kiffin fan club. I thought for the longest time there was no more overhyped coach in college football than Lane Kiffin, and I still think the lack of really big things has got to be held against him. But my goodness, he has had Ole Miss consistent for a few years now. I think he's grown up some since the days he was fired on the tarmac at Southern Cal. Look, I think if you're putting together a list of guys, like you're the AD at School X, and you've got a hire to make. Lane Kiffin's, if you got to pick between the 16 SEC coaches, Lane Kiffin's probably on there in that top 5 list. So I'm not 100% sure I believe it, but I can certainly defend it.
Yeah, and great recruiter, great. He's able to get talent to come play there out of the portal. So, yeah, I've got Lane Kiffin at 5. Number 4, got Shane Beamer, and I base this off of what they were able to do this year, and I remember listening to him at SEC Media Days talk about this team, and I wasn't buying it. I wasn't buying that this was going to be a successful year for him at South Carolina. And I know we can look at history and look back, and it hasn't been very consistent. But I think this year, him getting players that fits what he's trying to do and making them believe and making it work, I think he's a great fit at South Carolina, and I think they're going to win under him. I think we may not, see 8-9 win season every year, but I feel like South Carolina is going to be talked about when Shane Beamer is their head coach. And I think we're starting to see that now. And again, he has great Novembers, historically win games, and he was able to do that more this year and consistently win games. So I think as long as Shane Beamer's in South Carolina, they're going to be relevant.
Yeah, he's 29-22 overall, and he's 15-17 in the league. And I thought 2021 was a miracle. They were a bad football team, but he somehow got to a bowl game and got to 3 SEC wins. I think he's a pretty high floor guy. I think fit's also important. I think he's in the right situation that matters. I would have him in the top half. I just don't think I can put him ahead of guys that have been to a playoff like a DeBoer, like a Brian Kelly. But I think this is one that, the situation works for everybody, right? Like, I don't think there's a South Carolina fan out there that's arguing saying, you got Shane Beamer too high. And I think that's kind of important too. I think he's a really solid coach in a right situation, and it's defensible. It's higher than I would go, but I see your thought here.
Yeah, and again, I just look at what he's done, what he's doing right now, and I think that's really good. What he's doing right now at South Carolina,
and that's a good
number
point,
3. I went with Josh Heupel, Tennessee. Again, what he's done with this program, I think is remarkable. What Tennessee went from to what they are now in the playoff. I think that Josh Heupel has this thing rolling, and I think as long as he's there, they're going to win games. He gets great players to come and play at Tennessee, and so I think Josh Heupel is going to have the Vols in the conversation, whether in the playoff every year or not. I think they're going to be in the conversation to be in the playoff, because I think he's a great offensive mind. He's got a great staff, and I think they're going to win games under Josh Heupel.
On one hand, there's a little bit of feeling that he might have reached his ceiling. I don't know if I agree with that. It's just a little perception that's out there a little bit in their donor base. I will tell you this, though. If you had told us back in 2020, when Tennessee got rid of Jeremy Pruitt, that Tennessee was about to go 37-15 and 20-12 in the league over the next 4 years, I would have said you are out of your mind. That's what Josh Heupel's done. And I think if you're looking for a defense of having him high where you've got him, I think that's a pretty good one.
Yeah. There's no doubt about it. And again, I like what he's doing right now at Tennessee. Number 2, I went with Steve Sarkisian, Texas. I think Sark's a great coach. Obviously, great offensive mind. Went deep this year with the Longhorns, made it to the SEC championship year 1 in the conference. So, yeah, I mean, I think this is not really a surprise of who the top 2 are, because obviously Kirby Smart's number 1, won the SEC, made the playoff in a rough situation, losing starting quarterback. We'll see if these 2 can hang on the top, if Georgia and Texas will remain at the top of the SEC. I'm not sure they will. But as far as coaches go, I mean, these are 2 really good coaches in Steve Sarkisian and Kirby Smart. And obviously Kirby is just right now he's doing big things. History tells us as a head coach, he does big things. And so, yeah, I don't think there would be much pushback with my 1 and 2, Chris.
I would push back on Sarkisian a little bit. I'd like to see a little bit more history there. He's had 2 double-digit win seasons so far. They got an easy schedule this year. I think it's defensible. I don't know if that's what I would have chosen, but I certainly understand it.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And look, I think it's set up again for Texas to have a big year. I think they have the roster, the players to do that. So Sark 2, Kirby Smart number 1, not really a surprise there. Georgia, they've been towards the top. They weren't there this year, but again, had a battle through quarterback injury, playoffs. But I certainly don't think that takes away from Kirby Smart's coaching ability of able to win the SEC when you're in a tough spot. You lose one early to Alabama, you lose to Ole Miss. You beat Texas twice, one for the SEC championship. I just feel like the coaching job once again at Georgia puts Kirby Smart at the top.
Chase, when you told me we were going to be doing this list today, and by the way, this is your list. I just get to sit here and pick flaws with all of it, and you don't get to pick flaws with anything I say. That's how this has worked today. So hats off to you for being in the driver's seat there. But in all seriousness, if you'd said, hey, Chris, put a list together, I would have had Fitz doing this, and I always start where it's easy. And I think there were about two really easy choices in this, and this is one of them. Like, if the answer is anything other than Kirby Smart, my answer to you is you're crazy.
Yeah, yeah, and that's just how it's going to be, and I think he'll stay at the top for the foreseeable future. I really do. But Chris, this was tough. It was tough putting this thing together, and again, I would love for you to drop your comments in, and let me know what you think. Yeah, it was tough to put together. And look, I know you guys probably have problems with where I put some of these coaches, but you know what? That's where I thought they should be. So
hey, I do not envy you for doing this. And I had Brian Kelly's my biggest issue, as you can tell. Other than that, I thought all of your picks were, I might not have agreed with them, but they were all defensible.
Yeah, and that's okay.
Kelly and DeBoer, too, that I would have had higher.
Yeah, and those were tough. Those were tough to put for sure. That was fun.
I want to ask you something, Chase. And by the way, for people listening to this later, and we're doing it live, we're doing this. It is what, February the
18th.
The 18th? I had to look at the watch of 2025. So, you know, whatever. Who knows what could happen between now and the offseason or the next season. But I want to ask you this. Let's say we're doing this next year. How many of these coaches are still at their current stops?
I think most of them. I do think this may be a year where we see a handful not.
Yeah.
We didn't see any head coaching turnover this year. And I'm not saying they're all going to be fired. I think there may be some, that go somewhere else. I don't know. But I think there'll be several new coaches on our list next year.
Let's say we had no firings in the offseason or no coaching changes, and we had 3 last year. Nick Saban retired. We had the Mississippi State situation where they just said, hey, we made a mistake with Zach Arnett. And that was the right call.
Yeah.
And then we had who was the third? Elko. Oh, yeah, finally getting rid of Jimbo. It feels to me, and I can't really name you all the names, like that's a long time. That's 2 years where you're having an average of 1.5 head coaches moving on. And one was Nick Saban leaving on his own.
Yeah.
So that's 2 firings in 2 years. To me, my guess is you're going to have a backlog of discontent with a few of these guys, and the dam is going to burst somewhere. Like the Dan Mullen situation at Florida a couple years ago would be one. I mean, we could name them, Ed Ogeron at LSU. Like when the tide turns against you and people get angry, and to me, you got a lot, like, rightfully or wrongfully, I will name you some names here, okay? Could we see? I think as Sven points out in the chat, I think Lebby's going to have another year anyway, and I think he should. So I would take him off the list of guys that we could see a change. Hugh Freeze at Auburn, there could absolutely be a change if that doesn't go well.
Yep.
Mark Stoops at Kentucky. Feels like that one's getting a little tense. Feels like if they don't win next year, and I don't even know that it's the right move because I'm a Stoops guy in terms of what he's done. Feels like that one could change, right?
Yep. Oh, yeah.
I could see Sam Pittman just saying, hey, I'm done with this now. I don't think Arkansas is going to be great next year. Would miss him. Look at Oklahoma, regardless of all the breaks and the personal stuff, you got to win there. If Venables doesn't win this year, that's one I could see. I mean, Billy Napier at Florida, all it would take would be 2 bad games.
Yeah.
Brian Kelly at LSU, if they're not in the playoff this year, you got a lot of situations here. Look, I can't see Smart, Sarkisian, Heupel, Beamer, Kiffin, and probably not DeBoer or Elko going anywhere. Drinkwitz too.
Yeah.
But that bottom, this could be the year where like if you get a bad beat on the schedule or an injury, like at some point people don't care. When they're mad and ready for change, they're ready for you to go. I will be very interested to see, and I'm not going to ask you to name names, okay? But if you had to put an over-under on how many coaching changes we'll have in the league, what would you put it at?
Let's see, 4.
I think that's where I'd go to.
Yeah.
Because some of these guys will figure it out and have a better year than we think. Some of these guys, the dam will burst for reasons we discussed. Now, here's the other thing. Every now and then somebody blows up in a way that you didn't see coming.
Yeah.
You know, and it goes bad through something off the field. But I think 4 is where I'd go.
Yeah, I think that's a safe number to go with. I think there will be changes, and you're right. Some coaches are able to turn it around. Some you just know like things are going in the wrong direction, and that's the case for several places.
Yeah. Any final? By the way, congratulations you to doing this. I think it was a tough job. I think you did your homework. You had your reasons. We didn't always agree, but that's SEC football. Like we've never done a show in the history of this channel where audiences agreed with everything we said. So why would this be different?
That's right. You know, it's fun though. It's fun to sit down and look at all this. And again, a lot can change, and a lot will change in the 2025 season. We just have a few months to sit and think about it.
Yeah. Well, Chase, thanks for putting this together. I think we got another live stream coming, Thursday?
Yep. On Thursday.
The topic yet?
Round 11. I think we're going to hit on some big picture. What does maybe the playoff look like? How can the SEC fit better into the playoff? Those type things we're going to hit on Thursday.
Yeah. Well, looking forward to. Boy, there's a lot of discussion around that too.
Yes.
And I've got some opinions there.
Well, looking forward to hearing them.
Yeah. Well, hey, thank you all for watching and listening. I came from a baseball stream into this. Our teammates had basketball stuff this morning. We'll have basketball coverage tomorrow, if not tonight. So that's what we do here at Southeastern 16. We got a daily baseball show that's going now. Hope you enjoy that. Thank you for watching and listening. For Chase Robinson, I'm Chris Lee. You've been watching our football content here at Southeastern 16.